Hello and welcome to London's East End, where today we will take off from and then fly to Southampton Airport. So it's going to be a domestic flight over the UK. My initial plan was to fly from Southampton to London City and do the approach over there, but the winds are from the southwest, and the most fun weather to fly into London City is when you have winds from the east, because that will bring you over the London City area with all the famous landmarks. So I'm gonna do that another day, and today we will fly from London City Airport in London's East End with the FlyJSim Dash8-Q400 to Southampton International Airport. Now, as you can see, by the way, I don't know why I keep getting this plane. I once made a takeoff with a glider behind a tow plane, and now everywhere I fly, I always see this plane popping up. Whether it's over the Atlantic Ocean or not, doesn't really matter. It's anywhere. It's quite annoying, and I think it's a bug or something, but I can't get rid of it. If anyone else had this problem and knows how to get rid of this tow plane, please let me know. But anyway, back over to the Q400. As you can see, the 3D model is excellent. It's really beautiful. The only downside is it was developed for X-Plane 10. It does have, it had a compatibility upgrade to X-Plane 11. It just doesn't have the nice reflection on the surfaces that, of course, X-Plane 11 is well known on. But it was on sale in the xplane.org store this weekend, so I thought, well, for 20 bucks, I can risk it and see what it's like. I was a huge fan of the of the Dash 8 Q400 over in X-Plane or X-Plane in FSX. Had the majestic Dash 8 Q400 in there, and I was completely hooked on that airplane. Um, This airplane isn't as detailed or complicated or complex as the Majestic Dash 8 in FSX. If you're looking for a replacement of that and you buy this one, I think you're gonna be a bit disappointed. It is a very nice airplane. It certainly is not a beginner's airplane. You do have to know your stuff when you start flying this one. Um, It's just not, well, for instance, the flight management computer, the CDU, uh, it doesn't have all the functions that are provided with the Majestic Dash 8 in FSX. Now, Jack, the owner of FlyJSim, has said in an interview, or I heard it in another video, I believe it was a John Fly video here on YouTube, that he will be making a V2 of this airplane. But the interview was given a couple of months ago. He didn't started it then. He said he had to finish some other stuff first, and once it was finished, he would start the project, and it would take him maybe even over a year. So it's one for the long run, but not for the short run. So if you have patience, you can wait for that, and if you don't, well, you can. I think you can buy this add-on. It's a very nice airplane. I've flown 2 flights with it now. Bought it this morning. First flew from Geneva to Southampton, which was, well, interesting. And the second flight was from Southampton to London City, which was also quite interesting, especially the landing, which went horribly wrong. But I will explain that later. And this is the third attempt, so let's just see if we do any better today. Now, like I said, the 3D model looks excellent. It's very nicely done. And if you pop over into the flight deck, well, you can see it's a very decent 3D flight deck. Not everything works, not everything is modeled, but most of the stuff does. And you really have to look into manuals, etc., to find your way around. So in that respect, it does require some study, but I think It's a nice plane if you are an intermediate simmer. If you are a complete beginner, you've never flown in a flight sim, don't go with this. You're not ready for it. If you are a die-hard PMDG fan, you want hardcore in-depth systems, then this is too light for you. But if you just want a nice, decent airplane, twin engine, turboprop for regional or short-haul flights, this is a beautiful airplane. She flies wonderfully when you fly it on manual control. And well, let's just fire it up and bring it over to Southampton and see how that goes. And in the process, you will see the amount of depth that is created in the systems, etc. And you can make up your own mind whether you think it's worth the $20 or $30 or so. So anyway, we are in the flight deck. Of course, you always start with switching on the batteries. They are up here. There goes my eardrums. Um, so DC control is now switched on and everything comes alive. Now, not all the systems, the tests, etc., they are not modeled. For instance, in the Majestic Dash 8-Q400, everything worked, had the proper sounds, you name it. Not in this one. It's so in that that's what I mean. If you're looking for a substitute of the Majestic Dash 8, don't go with this. You will be disappointed. Um, anyway, I already created a short flight plan from London City via 2 VORs to Southampton. So let's start by putting in the flight plan. Now, of course, this is a VOR to VOR navigation route, so we can do two things. We can either, oh, there goes my mouse. We can either fly VOR to VOR by just entering course frequencies and courses manually. Or we can do it by programming them into the flight management computer. And we're going to do the last one of these two options, so you can immediately see what the flight management computer is made of. And it's basically an oversimplified rendition of the real thing. You start with this screen, so you put in the ICAO code for the airport that you're at, so London City's Echo Golf Lima Charlie. London City, fly at 0 feet, so that's all right. Press next. Segment number 2, the second nav point is a VOR beacon, Ockham. So we want to fly to VOR. You have to tell whether you fly to an airport, VOR, NDB, or a fix. So if you don't know what these terms mean, you better start do some studying before you even think about going into the skies. So that's Ockham, and we have a cruise altitude of 12,000 feet. So let's say we want to be at, oh crap, keep doing this wrong, clear. First you set VOR, then you give the identifier code, so Ockham, then you press the left line selector key and then you can set at which altitude you want to pass that waypoint, so 12,000 feet. Press next, and then we'll get the Oscar Delta Hotel or the ODM VOR. So again, VOR, Oscar Delta Hotel, press the left line selector key. We want to be at 12,000 feet. Next, and then we fly to the airport Echo Golf Hotel India, which is Southampton, and there we want to land. So fly at 0 feet. 0 feet. Whatever you do, never press enter in this stage. The enter button on the flight management computer is the equivalent of the direct to button in a Airbus or Boeing style flight management computer. So this is the final waypoint of my flight. When I press enter, the flight management computer will draw a straight line from where I am right now to Southampton. And that's not what we're looking for. So just go previous until you are at your starting waypoint. And that's basically what you can do in the flight management computer of this airplane. There's no weight and balance stuff. You really have to work with the tables. I can remember from the Majestic Q400 that we also had to work with the tables in there. So I don't think that in the real airplane Um, the flight management computer has the same functions as, for instance, a Boeing or an Airbus one, but it has more functions than just this, because the entire system is completely different in the real airplane. But anyway, this is the lateral navigation. Our flight plan is in here, so that's all right. So let's go to the weight and balance sheet. We have a gross weight of 58.1 tons. So let's go over to the manual, because in the manual there is a couple of pages with reference speed or speed references. Ref speeds 16, so let's just go down there. Here we are. Now, in the manual on the ref speech page, you will find all sorts of tables. They give you takeoff or landing weights at certain gross weights of the airplane. Now, the gross weight that we had was well in 58, so we need to go to this page, and was 58.1, I thought. So just let's use the 58.3. V1 speed, we want to do a flaps 10 takeoff, because the runway here in London City isn't very long, so I don't want to go for flaps 5. So flaps 10 takeoff, that means V1 and rotate 117, V2 119er, and then over to 130 to the climb speed of 150. So let's just dial that in. Now you dial in the speeds by pressing the speed box selector here. Then you get this window and you dial this knob until you get the speed that you want. So we want 117 for V1. Press it again, gives you V rotate. Well, speed is identical in our case, so we press it again. V2, that's 119. Next speed is 130, I thought it was. Let's just see. Yeah, 130. Well, 131 for all that matters. Then press it again, and we have a climb out speed of 150. So let's just say 151. It's quite hard to set these because this knob, there's no possibility to only adjust by one knot. So you really have to switch and turn it. And that doesn't really work out very well, because it's quite sensitive. So with a very small movement, you immediately have an increase of 2. Let's just see what the QNH at the London City Airport is today. 29902. Hey, the wind has changed. It's now 030. Crap. Well, anyway, 29902 for the QNH. So let's move slightly to the side, and then we have the QNH settings. So 29902. There we go. That's set. And for all that matters, that's now done. Alright, so we have set the speed, we have set the lateral navigation, we set the cruise altitude in the flight management computer, and now we want to set the initial climb altitude, which will be 6,000 feet today. I don't know why, but somewhere in my first flight I did something with this dial which increased or decreased by 5. And now I'm not able of getting it back to 0, so 590905, that is 6,000 feet for this flight. So that's the initial climb altitude, and that immediately brings us over to the Autopilot panel. Now the Autopilot system is something new. Well, not new, but different from when you are used to Boeing or Airbus style airplanes. There are certain modes, of course. AP, that's the Autopilot master switch, so that switches it on or off. The yaw damper switch below that. And here are the modes that we have. The right column is the lateral navigation and the left one is the vertical navigation, and that's quite important to remember. If you press heading, it will basically fly the heading in which you have set the heading buck. You set the heading buck with this one. If you press nav, the autopilot will follow the navigation instructions from the source that is selected in here. And you select that source using this one. There are several. This is ILS1, so I've dialed in the ILS frequency for runway 27 on my previous flight. It's still dialed in here. So in this mode, if I press nav, it will fly the ILS. But if I move this, I can go to VOR2, so I can put in another VOR. This is the London VOR, I believe. I'm not really sure. Or it's the Southampton one. I think it's the Southampton one, 113.35. And we can also move up again, and then we have Flight Management System 1. And that's the one that we want right now, because now when I press nav, the autopilot will fly the route that we have programmed into the flight management computer. So this is okay. Shut up. Where was I? Oh yeah, the flight management system. So that's now selected. Of course, the approach mode, well, that's self-explanatory. If you don't know what it is, you're not fit or qualified to fly this airplane, because it's a standard mode in, well, basically every airliner that has an autopilot nowadays. The back course hold, standby switch, and for the vertical modes we have IAS or indicated airspeed, VS vertical speed, VNAV, ALT and ALT select. Now, of course, every mode has a different effect on the airplane. So IAS is basically the indicated airspeed hold. And what is important with the IAS is that this airplane doesn't have auto throttle. So you set the power at a certain setting, and then when it reaches a certain speed, you can press IAS hold, and then the airplane will change the pitch attitude in order to maintain that speed. So if you are flying full thrust and you say indicated airspeed hold at 150 knots, then the airplane, of course, it wants to exceed beyond 150 knots at full speed. So the autopilot will pitch the nose up, and that will cause the airplane to climb with the speed constant at 150, and it will change the vertical speed to maintain the indicated airspeed. Further on in flight, when you want to start your descent, you can, for instance, say, well, I want to fly 220 knots. Press indicated airspeed hold, close down your throttles, and then the airplane will pitch the nose down because it wants to keep this speed at 220 knots. And of course, when you continue straight and level flight and you have no power, you will lose speed. So the airplane wants to compensate for that. That's how the IAS works. The other mode is vertical speed. You can select vertical speed, set the speed with this wheel. It will be displayed in the primary flight display. And vertical speed will, well, like the name suggests, have the autopilot fly the vertical speed that you gave in, and it will completely disregard the indicated airspeed. So for instance, if you're flying 180, you say I want to descend at 700 feet per minute, the airplane will fly 700 feet per minute descent, and the speed will automatically go way beyond 180 because you're going down and maybe you didn't adjust your throttles. So that's another possibility of descending. I usually use the IAS mode because it's about the most it's about the fastest way that you can descend with this airplane and still be within the speed bucket. VNAV, I never used that. In the real world airplane, I understood it's not used very often, only during air-nav approaches. I'm not a real-world pilot, so I cannot verify that. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's something that I read sometime. Alt, that's basically the altitude hold switch. So if you're climbing to, let's say, 12,000 feet, you are passing 5,500. If you press this button at 5,500, the autopilot will make the airplane level off and fly at 5,500 feet. Alt select, that's the mode that we want now, because that's basically the autopilot's instruction to climb to this altitude. So that's the autopilot in a nutshell. You will see this throughout the flight, and don't worry about it. Right, so we have LNAV, the VNAV is basically set, so we can move over to starting the engine. So let's begin with starting up the APU. First you press start power, then you press start. You will see that this one goes to run. You can hear it also. Switch on the generator and the bleed air. Now we'll move the flow, so these are all on. This is good, this is also alright. We have a temperature of 15 degrees Celsius, so we do not need anti-ice for now, so we leave that off. Static heats, they can remain off until engine starts. The windshield, we don't need that right now. Flight data recorder, that's not modeled. Exterior lights are not needed for now. These are the controls for the panel lighting in the flight deck. APU, well, that's already on. Engine starts, well, we can set them both to norm already. Landing altitude, I've set the pressurization to auto. We can increase the landing altitude slightly because Southampton was at 44 feet. Doesn't seem to work too well either. Or maybe you have to switch it to manual and then it will work, but we're not going to bother too much about that. We are low altitude today. The AC control there on external power is off because it's not connected. The bleeds for the air conditioning, they can be off. Let's set the passenger signs on. Emergency lights are armed already, so that's okay. Then we press the standby hydraulic pressure and the PTU control on. Both the fuel pumps go on. And we verify that the fuel levers are off before we start the engine. And that's basically it for now. So let's just pop outside again and close the passenger door. If the door is open, you cannot start the engines. So there it is. We don't have the pushback plug-in, so we'll just start up the engines and taxi out of here. Now, the APU is on, the igniters are set to normal, so what you do then is you press this button once, it will go to select 2. You always start number 2 engine first in the Dash 8. So you press that one, then you press the starter once, don't hold it, just press it. You will see this spooling up. No, you don't. I think I missed some bleeds. Is that it? Don't really get why it doesn't start now. Again. There we go. So now you open this, move that up, and you move it to the start and feather position, not beyond that. Start and feather. You cannot even move it beyond that, but it's quite important. Now in a minute you will see the propeller starting to spin. There it goes. So that's the prop. That's startup of engine number 2 complete. You move the switch over to the number 1 position. Press it twice. Hit the start button. Move the fuel lever to the start feather position. And then you will see the prop RPM start to increase in a second. There we go. And that started as well. Oh, I completely forgot to switch on the beacon. My mistake. So the exterior lights are now on. Let's set the taxi lights on. Pito heats can come on. Now you will see the AC generator annunciator lights being on. They will extinguish once you start to increase your throttle. So don't worry too much about that. Make sure that the airplane is on the parking brake. And then you have to move this to in top. That will cause the fuel levers to move up. And then you press MCL, which brings them back to minimum. And that's what you need for a taxi. So in top, MCL, or MCR even, that's plenty. Set the spoilers to taxi. And now what I will do is I will release the brake and move the thrust levers to the reverse position in order to taxi out of this airport. There we go. And by the way, you need it at MCL. You don't need it at the minimum. That's not enough to move the airplane. So let's do a flight control check in the meanwhile. Full left, full right, neutral, down, up, neutral, full left, and full right. And now we'll move up the throttles. Set this to taxi again. And we can taxi out to the runway. So let's just do that. Release the brakes. Now, for instance, in the Majestic Dash 8, this one works. You can set this down so that you cannot move the throttles beyond certain power settings for taxi, because this airplane is one strong airplane. It has two huge engines which create lots of horsepower. And since the airplane itself is of course relatively small and usually quite light, once you are on the ground you advance the thrust levers. Well, given the power to weight ratio, the airplane really wants to go off. So you hardly need any thrust to taxi. What you usually need is braking. So now what we're gonna do is reduce some speed and set the strobes on and the landing lights, because we are going onto the runway now. We need to backtrack in order to be able to take off from runway 27. So here we go. Let's see if we can switch on the transponder. Is that somewhere down here? On. There we go. Always keep an eye in front of you, of course. And let's set flaps 10 prior to takeoff. Now on our takeoff we will not stick to any SID, we will break every law there is in this part of the UK airspace. We're just gonna fly straight ahead over London City to enjoy some of the sights. In real life you cannot do that. You have to bank off to the right almost immediately after takeoff because you will fly through the approach lanes of Heathrow when there are westerly winds. And of course the air traffic controllers and pilots coming into Heathrow will not be too happy about that. But since this is a sim and I don't have any AI traffic whatsoever, we will just take off, fly straight ahead over London, over the city area, and then we'll bank off to the left to our waypoint. So let's just line up and wait on runway 27. I really like the livery on this airplane. Alright, so here we are on the runway. That's max flaps 10. Flight controls were checked. Initial climb altitude is set, so passengers are in their seats. We have no annunciator lights whatsoever, so we are clear to go. Let's say we just received our takeoff clearance, and now we will start our takeoff roll. So gently forward pressure on the yoke, release the brakes, and increase thrust. You will see this switch move to the flight mode automatically. That happens as soon as you... I don't know whether it's N1 prop RPM or forward speed, but it will switch over automatically. There it goes. So full thrust, almost full thrust. Strong winds from the left. Oh crap, there is that other airplane. Bush. And rotate. And here we are. Positive rate. Gear up. Heading straight for the Millennium Dome in Canary Wharf. Flaps 5. Flaps up. Let's just engage the autopilot at vertical speed mode. So we want to climb at 1000 feet per minute on the current heading of and let's just press the indicated airspeed hold. So now the airplane will start climb much faster. But we are here over the skies of London. That's Canary Wharf, the financial district. Over the Thames, Tower Bridge, Shot. Been to London quite a few times. I really like the city. Although after 7 times I think seen most of the sights by now. But if you've never been there, it's really worth to go there sometime. But anyway, House of Parliament with the Big Ben, the London Eye. So let's just make that left turn now, heading for our files a flight plan. So let's go to the left. And let's say that we are clear to climb to 12,000 feet. So there we are. So climbing out over southern London. Enjoy some final views over the Thames. And London Heathrow over there. Quite an impressive image, I think. But anyway, here we are. We are now approaching the nav pad, so let's just switch from heading to nav mode now. That will cause the airplane to make a right turn to gently align on the basically the vector for Occam VOR. So let's just dial in the heading mode also. And there we are. Climbing out at a steady 230 knots, which is basically a little bit too fast for this airplane. Normally you would climb out between 200 and 220, but because the climb wasn't too steep in the beginning of the flight, and we managed to make speed quite rapidly, and by the time I pressed the IAS button, we were already at 230 knots. So anyway, here we go. Well, we are now hitting the clouds. Temperature of 4 degrees, so let's just switch on some anti-ice stuff. And let's just, let's release the passengers from their seat belts. Switch off the APU, by the way, could have done that already on the ground. Taxi lights can come off. We are already over 10,000 feet, so the landing lights can come off as well. Let's switch back to the vertical speed mode. Now the airplane will level off and we can reduce thrust, otherwise we will overspeed too much in a minute. So now we have to be really careful not to overspeed. So just gently back on the thrusts. Only 19.5 miles from Ottingham. And now we have to move the vertical speed slightly down. Set the alt select again so that the plane will level off at 11,995 feet. Well, it's a bit of a shame of these clouds. Here we have some of the countryside. Because we are flying over the beautiful southern part of England. Well, basically every part of England is beautiful, but anyway. So while we are still in the air and we are not very close to Southampton yet, let me just pick up my iPads and find a chart for Southampton Airport for the runway 20 approach. EGHI, there I have it. That's the viewer. ILSDME runway 20. Here I have the map. That is a course of 201 and a frequency of 110.75. So let's already dial that in here. So 110.75. Press it again, now that's set. And we can already start our descent. Let's say we want to go down to about 6,000 feet. Indicated airspeed holds. Closing the throttles. Oh crap, that speed was too high, so 2.5. Just like this will be sufficient. And the Southampton viewer at 113.35, that was already set, I thought. Yeah, it is. Well, we didn't burn a lot of fuel, so let's just stick to this table for landing as well in terms of weight. Well, we can check whether the weight has changed. Oh, 57.6. No, it's still closer to this one, so let's just stick for this. So that's flaps 0, 150, flaps 5, 138, flaps 10, 129. Flaps 15, 123, and flaps 35 at 117 knots. Only 22 miles away from the airport, so let's just dial in the heading here. And see if we can set some of these speeds. Let's say we want to have the first speed dial at 129 for flaps 10. And the next one at
2500.
What the hell?
2500.
Autopilot is connected, pilot has control. It wasn't supposed to descend through 6,000 feet. So that shows again that this airplane really is something you have to keep an eye on. Let's just say I want autopilot engaged. Nav mode, alt select, IAS. Nav mode. There we go. Now the airplane will climb 1,500 feet per minute. Well, since we are very close to the airport already, let's just Stick to 3,000 feet because we will be on the ILS pretty soon. So let's change the nav source to ILS and change the course to 201. That's already set. And let's reduce thrust so we can get rid of some speed before we start to land. And we'll set this one to 117 like we were doing. Alright. Let's just turn further to the right. To intercept the localizer first. And let's descend 600 feet per minute to
2,500.
or just 1,000 feet per minute to get below the glide slope, because we want to be below the glide slope once we when we establish on the localizer. Okay, up 800 feet per minute descent. Flaps 5. There's the localizer, so RMD approach mode. A bit too late doing that, but I think we will be alright. Flaps 10. Gear down. And increase a little bit of thrust to avoid us from decelerating too quickly. Set the heading to 201. Missed approach heading selected. Flaps. And runway inside. So 117, flaps 35, gears down, lock 3 green, flaps green, 35 green. Missed approach heading and altitude are set. Passengers are in their seats, landing lights on. Landing clearance is received, so let's just bring her in for a landing. And let's try to do that manual despite of all the winds. So autopilot is connected. Pilot has control. We are low, so let's increase a little bit of thrust. Reduce the rate of descent. But we don't want to climb. So reduce thrust again. And now we are too high, of course. It's quite windy.
50, 40, 30, 20, 10,
Now just move your throttles to the lowest position. That will put them in reverse. And apply manual braking. Do not apply reverse on your yoke. If you do that, you will set it to takeoff go around mode. So here we are in Southampton. Southampton scenery, by the way, is the Pilot Plus Southampton EGHI. It can be bought in the explain.org store. So let's just roll out to the end of the runway and vacate. Now let's just first see what that landing looked like from the outside. Of course, the approach wasn't as it should. Should have factored myself for a longer final approach. But because the airplane flies quite slow on final, we had plenty of time to establish ourselves. But normally you would go for a 10-mile final established on the localizer. Quite a hard landing. There come the spoilers. And a manual braking. So there we are. So let's just move the throttles up because they are still in reverse position. Oh. These go to taxi. Flaps up. And by the way, the ground speed indicator is located down there. When you go sharp corners like this, try to be below at or below 10 knots. So here we are. Landing lights off. Strobe lights off. Over to the reds. Or the rotating beacon lights. Well, this was of course a very short flight with just a takeoff and a descent, or a climb and a descent. If you have longer flights with cruise levels in between, you can press this one when you reach cruise altitude to set the thrust lever, the fuel levers to the other position. You can land the airplane with the fuel levers in both positions. It just slightly changes the behavior, but it's nothing to be worried about. But as you can see, or as you saw it, it's still quite a challenging plane to fly. It's not something very simple that you just start up and can forget about. It really requires some attention, some studying. I suggest you go to the manual. They have a pretty nice description on how to start her up, which processes to take, which steps to take, which checklist to do, etc. So it's very informative. So in general, I really like the add-on, despite the fact that it isn't as in-depth maybe as the Majestic Dash 8. It's still a very nice airplane to fly. course, I should have switched this off before landing, but that's what you get when you don't use checklists. But I hope that that this video gave you a nice impression of what the FlyJSim Dash8-Q400 in X-Plane is all about, what you get when you buy it, and I hope that this video will help you make a decision whether you want to buy it or not. So if you have any questions, comments, tips, tricks, whatsoever, please leave them in the comment section below. As usual, please do so in a respectful manner. And I hope you liked the video, and I hope to see you next time. So bye bye.